Hey everybody, Blades of God here from Hammer Bros Gaming, coming at you with our newest guide series. Today I'm going to be kicking off our Gears Tactics achievement guide for the Immortal Legion achievement. This is a great game. I've had a lot of fun with it. Definitely change of pace from the original Gears games, but this achievement can be a real pain in the neck. You need to complete the entire game on the hardest difficulty without a single unit dying. And unlike on the lower difficulties, if your health bar drops to 0, you do not go down but not out, and then you can revive your units. No, if your health bar drops to nothing, you're dead. That's it. Game over. Restart the checkpoint, restart the level. It can get to be really tricky, especially when you start dealing with, Theron guards, boomers, the things that can one-shot kill you from a very, very long ways away and have a very low chance of missing. To do this, a couple of things. We're going to be playing on the classic game mode. We're not doing this in jacked game mode. I know a lot of people think that it's easier because it gives you Jack, who can be very, very powerful, but I've found that the additional enemies that it brings into the maps, it's just more of a headache to deal with. So we're going to be playing in classic mode. I'm going to be showing you the gear that I use, the tactics that I use, no pun intended, and the classes that I bring into each mission. I'll take you through mission by mission. This video is going to tackle Act 1.1 and 1.2. And if you find this guide helpful, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. We're going to have a lot more of these videos coming up. But we appreciate you guys checking out the channel and the video, and let's get right into the guide. Alright, so let's get right into this. So we're going to go ahead and select New Game Classic. You could do all content, but when I did my first run, as you can see right here, 100% insane difficulty complete, I did it on Classic. So this is going to be my third, or actually fourth time finishing the game. You want to make sure that when you start your game, Iron Man is off and that you select insane difficulty. There is an option that you can swap out difficulties later in the game, but that will invalidate any of the achievements that you're working towards. So here we go. Act 1.1. We're going to have a bunch of cutscenes, and then we're just going to skip the tutorial, because if you're playing this for your first time, you should not play it on Insane. Play it on a lower difficulty, get the feel of the game, so that's just my best advice. If you skip the tutorial, you're going to get all the rewards. As you can see, main objectives are complete. You get the item crate, the loot crate, so you don't miss out on anything there. But if you played through the game before, you just can skip the tutorial, save yourself some headache. Totally still will count, as none of your units died or got downed. So we're going to open up our common case, and we get the Retro Lancer mod for the stock. I'm going to come into our barracks, and we're going to look at Gabe first. So we're going to swap out for a 5% crit chance on the stock. We're going to want to focus a lot on critical damage. Patrol is useful, and I actually think I changed my mind and go with Patrol. Yeah, I do. And then we're going to go over to Sid, and same thing, we're going to check out what he has, and since he has Hair Trigger, which does give you a chance to shoot twice, I decided to go with crit chance instead because, well, you have a better chance of shooting twice, but you can still miss your second shot, so it's better to go with anything that's going to bring up your crit chance. Now let's look at our skill trees. Obviously we don't have any skills unlocked except for our base skill. We're going to unlock Empower for Gabe, as that's going to be very, very useful for giving us extra actions to take out enemies that are weakened. And pretty much this entire right side of the skill tree is very useful. The left side focuses on healing, and we're not really going to have a chance to heal. So we're going to go with Chainsaw Mastery, and we will eventually hit Weak Point, Teamwork, Distracting Fire to eventually get down to Surge. And Surge is going to be very, very useful for the last boss, but we got a ways to go before we get there. So there's a couple different tracks you can take depending upon your gameplay style. I will show you which path I take as time goes on. And now we're going to move over to Sid. Sid starts with Regeneration, which is extremely useful if you do end up taking damage, because Sid's a pretty tanky character. And again, we're going to be sticking to the right side primarily of Sid's skill tree. So we're going to end up starting by taking, we're going to take points on Intimidate, and there are a couple on the left side that can be useful, but for now we're going to, like I said, take Intimidate, and we want to get the Recharging Bayonet, we want to get Enraged Bayonet, And we're going to start with, but we're actually going to start with Executioner. And what Executioner does, if you have a damaged enemy, then you get an increased critical hit chance with Sid, which is very useful because it takes a lot of concentrated and coordinated fire to put these enemies down. So you don't want to lead off with Sid once you have that skill unlocked. You actually want to use him more as your cleanup guy. So now we're going to jump into Act 1, Chapter 2, which is really the first actual fighting we're going to be doing in this insane guide. You can see we get two additional squad mates. We get Wolf and we get Trin, Maricela Trin, and Tyrone Wolf. So Wolf's a heavy, Trin's a scout, and basically what we're going to be doing here, and this holds true for all the maps pretty much, is we're going to advance very cautiously because we do not want to expose too much of the map at once. We want to only be able to engage in a small number of the enemies at a time, and we don't want to get overwhelmed. And Overwatch is going to be your best friend. You're going to be using Overwatch a lot. So you can see I'm setting up a sort of wall of Overwatch cones just to make sure that all of the approach routes are covered. And we're going to send Wolf, the heavy, to the left here to sort of guard the left side. And as you can see right there, all of my pathways up were covered, but we didn't move up far enough, so we didn't actually trigger any of the enemies to advance. But now we have. We've got some drones that are up top here. The drones aren't very difficult to take out. Coordinated fire is, from a couple of people is usually enough to take them off the map. Grenades, even in their base form, a frag grenade landed right next to them is enough to kill them. And you obviously have the support's the support class's chainsaw and the the retro charge that Sid has. But we're not going to use that right now because we don't want to push too far up. It is tempting to try to use these early and take these enemies off the field of play and lessen the numbers, but you're going to end up stranding yourself way out in the middle of nowhere without any real cover. So again, we're going to advance slowly. We're going to put our Overwatch shots more towards the middle because the way the enemy AI works is that they will take cover, but their first directive is to close on you and get into a firing range or a firing position. So as you can see, they're getting close, but they're mostly advancing straight up the gut. They're not flanking, and that's why the majority of my Overwatch cones are in the middle. I did put Marcella's to the right just to guard that one side, but didn't end up needing it, so not a big deal. And now you can see they have their Overwatch cones set up. And one of the things I like to do is actually save my frags until they start setting up their Overwatch shields or their Overwatch cones. I know that you have the the disruptive fire on the snub pistol that you can use, but I don't really like using a action point just for the distracting fire, or whatever it's called, disruptive fire, because it doesn't do a lot of damage. A grenade has a much wider area of effect. It's going to take out several enemies, or at least hurt several enemies, and possibly knock a couple of the Overwatch cones off the field. So you can see I moved Maricela up and used her grenade to hit 3 enemies, took 1 enemy off the map completely, and disrupted an Overwatch cone, freeing up this area of the map so I could move Sid up a little further. Now, I see I've got a weakened enemy right there. I'm going to use a grenade to take him off the map as well, because I don't want to advance up into that cone of Overwatch that the drone has set up. Now I'm going to move over to Gabe, and the nice thing about this map is that it's really not a big rush. You can see that I'm not pushing very aggressively. I am kind of setting up my Overwatch shots, kind of letting the enemies come into me, and just taking my time with it. There's no need to rush. There's no reinforcements coming or anything like that right now, so you can really use these Overwatch shots to your advantage. You can see Sid, I didn't really have a position to put him in where I wouldn't have been in danger of friendly fire, so I just decided to use my last action point to reload the Retro Lancer. And now we wait. We're going to see what the drones do. You can see one of them advanced, 2 of them advanced, and unfortunately it wasn't enough to take him out, but that one on the right is down to 91 health, so he's going to be easy pickings. We're going to get him off the map, and I'm going to use Wolf's grenade to damage one drone that was at full health and take another one off the map completely. Plus I knocked his cone, his Overwatch cone off the map. So I've got pretty much free reign to move right now. And again, the big thing you're going to want to do is make sure that you're not rushing. There's no need to rush on this level. Take your time. Keep, use full cover to your advantage. As you can see, when I move my cursor around, there is a half shield logo on these half walls, but when I was behind the van where Sid and Gabe are, you actually have a full shield logo. And that means that you have full cover. Full cover makes it a lot more difficult for enemies to shoot at you. The way that the AI kind of reads full cover is that they don't prioritize you. They'll prioritize people that are in half cover first. So right now, Sid and Gabe are very safe. A note on Overwatch, you can see, just as I was saying that Gabe was safe, I put Gabe into Overwatch and he actually stepped out from cover. So if there's an enemy, especially later in the game once you get snipers and they're on guards, if there's an enemy that is outside of your Overwatch range but has eyes on you, they can shoot at you and you are not going to be in cover and you will probably get hit. So you need to be very mindful of the distances that these enemies can travel and the distances that they will shoot. So, you can see we just moved through another enemy phase, and I'm going to actually, at this point, I see there's 2 enemies left on the board. I'm going to rush up with Gabe and use the chainsaw bayonet to take him off the board. He was a full health enemy, and, one shot with that, it was enough to take him down. I'm going to have Sid advance and execute this guy, and that's going to give us additional action points to move and set up for our next round of enemies. Well, not quite the enemies yet, but we're going to eventually get to setting up for the next round of enemies. That brings me to a very important point, and this is something that should be common knowledge if you played through the game, but you want to try to set up your executions to maximize your squad's ability points or action points. Sometimes it's not necessarily worth it to rush out and get an execution if there's a good chance you're going to take fire from an enemy. But in that situation that I was just in, where he was, 1 or 2 enemies left on the board, you can definitely risk going out and trying to get that execution, as it's going to help with positioning, especially in this situation on this map where you're going to have additional enemy units coming in. It saves a little bit of time. This map, like I said, it's more a factor of saving time because you can move your units further up and position them properly, but in later missions when you have a lot of emergence holes or Reaver drop enemies, being able to get behind cover or get that little extra bit of distance between enemy waves can be a real lifesaver. So as you can see right now, I'm setting up for my next wave of enemies. You can see where the target is. I need to step inside that ring to sort of trigger the next series of events, and I'm not going to do that quite yet. You can see I'm positioning my units, so I've got my scout facing kind of behind us. I've got Gabe and Sid facing up and to the right, and then I'm slowly positioning my heavy up near this crate. I'm going to have him grab the the equipment crate, and then take cover next to the sandbag and the part wall right next to him on the right there. The reason I do that is because once you step into that circle, you're going to have Reavers drop off a bunch of wretches directly in front, well, a little ways ahead of, but in front of where Gabe is right there. So we're going to have wretches come in right up there, and then the next step is you're going to have an E-hole pop up right next to where my heavy is. So right, literally a couple steps north, if you're orienting the screen where the top of the screen is north, a couple steps north of where Tyrone is, right there you're going to have a emergence hole pop up. So what you want to do is measure out, make sure that your movement's going to be able to get you to about there in one move, and that way you can plant a grenade on top of that emergence hole and just circumvent any of the enemies coming out. So again, I keep setting overwatches. I realize that there's no enemies coming until I step into that ring, but as I was playing this to get the gameplay footage, it was just habit. At this point, I always set overwatches even when there's no enemies. So I've got Tyrone where I need him to be. His grenade is 1 turn away from being ready, but I get 1 turn of time between when I step into the ring and when the enemies actually appear. So I'm going to move my units right back to where they were, and now the timer has started, so to speak. On the next enemy turn, we're going to see, like I said, we're going to see the juvies come in. We're going to see the emergence hole start. It's not going to open up, but the ground's going to crack and show you where it is. And we're going to take out all of these wretches in this sort of next wave within, I believe it's 2 turns. After that, we're going to have 4 drones dropped off back near where we started the map, along with a whole nother shipment of wretches. And we'll cross that bridge in just a minute, but first, like I said, we've got 8 wretches coming in. Normally, if you set up your allied units where I have them, the AI is going to act very predictably at this point. The E-hole wasn't exactly where I thought it was going to be, but that's okay. I'm still well within E-hole closing distance, and right now, this is a perfect example of why I like having Empower on my support unit. So it takes 2 turns for me to move my heavy up here, and his 3rd turn is going to be used to plant a grenade directly on top of the E-hole. Well, if I leave him there, he's going to die, and we don't want our units to die, so I'm going to use Empower on him. That gives him 1 turn, 1 additional action point, to get out of there and get to safety. So I'm going to be very mindful of which unit I'm selecting, and then I'm going to fall back to pretty much as far away as I can get without needing to be out in the open. Now I'm going to move over to Gabe. I used one of his action points to use to give my heavy an action point. So he has 2 shots for Overwatch. Sid has 3 shots for Overwatch. And I'm actually going to move my scout up a little bit and sort of use her as an additional wave of Overwatch protection. Oh, no, I guess that was on a different playthrough. But, oh, it's because there was only 2. Yeah, okay, so there was 2 wretches there, so I figured I wasn't going to need it. But as you can see, that grenade just detonated to completely circumvented any enemies appearing from there. The Overwatch took out both of those wretches, and now all 4 of the wretches on the left side are going to advance on my heavy, which works out really good because they actually end up being bunched together. So now what I can do is, since I just used my grenade with my heavy, I'm going to have Sid move over here. His grenade's ready to go, and I'm going to toss this grenade directly in the middle of my clutch of wretches. And again, this is something that you definitely want to be mindful of as you're playing on Insane, that even without any sort of upgrade to your grenades, they will take out wretches in 1 shot. And they will take out a large group of wretches, and wretches love to bunch together. So it's an excellent way to sort of do some crowd control as you play through this insane playthrough. So now we're going to set up for the next wave of enemies. I know there's nothing that's going to be appearing to the north. All the enemies at this point are going to be coming from the south. Again, this is orienting the map where the top of the screen is the north and the bottom of the screen is the south. And eventually I actually will rotate the camera around. But here we go. You can see 4 drones, just regular Hammerburst drones, drop in behind us. And then we're going to have a bunch of wretches come in on this right-hand side. Now, this is why I have that character set up here the way I do, because with that Overwatch, even though they didn't get to attack, we took out quite a few of them to begin with. So it's always good to take the enemies off the board, and if you're following this guide, the enemies on this mission drop in a very predictable manner. Actually, most of the campaign missions have a very predictable enemy pattern, so you should be able to use this guide to set up most of your encounters for success. You can see right here I didn't have a shot from where I was at, so I had to move my scout around, and I'm realizing that if I reload, that takes me down to 1 action point, and then if I shoot, I'm only going to have 1 action point. So instead, I decided to pull out my snub and do a little bit of damage to this wretch, and that's going to leave me 1 action point to fall back and get back into cover. So right there, and then I'm going to use Gabe to finish off this wretch and just take him off the board completely. So now we've dealt with all the wretches from that wave of reinforcements. Now we just have the 4 drones. And again, it can be very tempting to sort of rush up thinking it's just a 4-on-4, but it's not a good idea. Like we've been doing, we're going to take our time, take it slow. I've got all of my units, well, except for Sid right now, in cover. So I'm going to reload instead of trying to advance, and I'm going to use my Overwatch to cover this area. Now, you saw that I used a stim grenade to heal my heavy, and the reason I did that was because I should have swapped out Gabe's stim nades for frag grenades, but I forgot to do that before I started. So if you're watching this guide, I would highly recommend that you swap out Gabe's stim nades for frag grenades, because normally you're not going to be able to do or survive enough hits to have a chance to heal. And right there, so as I was saying earlier in the guide, if you go into Overwatch, you're going to be exposed. I got a little overzealous there. I should have been using full cover rather than half cover, and the enemies kind of flanked me, got a shot on me, and took out my heavy. So, since this is a no-death guide, go ahead and hit your reload checkpoint. The odds are, even with this guide, the AI is going to get the best of you from time to time, and you're going to have to use that reload checkpoint button. Do not worry about it. Reloading the checkpoint does not invalidate the achievement. You can reload acts, chapters. I mean, you can back up quite a bit without needing to worry about losing any of the achievement progress. So we're right back where we were. The first wave of enemies has come back in, and we're pretty much going to follow the exact same steps we did, and this is actually a pretty good way to demonstrate how predictable the AI can be. So my units are going to be almost in the exact same location as they were the first time around, and you're going to see the AI does almost the exact same thing. So this was the time that I actually moved my scout up to offer additional support to this kind of cluster of Overwatch cones. And watch, you're going to see the same thing happen. The E-hole is going to explode with that grenade that we planted on top of it. The two wretches on the right are going to charge into the Overwatch cone, but unfortunately one of them got interrupted, so it didn't happen the exact same way, but the end result was the same. Then we have the four wretches who advanced almost exactly to the same place. So that means that I can do the same thing to deal with them. I'm going to move Sid over here, I'm going to use a frag grenade, toss it in the middle of them, and wipe out all four of these wretches in one go. Now, since I moved my scout, that means I'm not going to have my scout set up exactly where she needs to be, and that means that my action point, or my action point to enemy location, I don't know what you want to call it, ratio, isn't going to be the same as it was on the first play. And you can see right here, I'm considering I put my heavy back in cover on those boxes, but we're going to play things a little differently this time around. So I use my one of my remaining action points to move my scout back into position. So now I have Gabe and my scout both in the same place. I use that stim grenade again to heal my heavy, and I'm going to go back into Overwatch, and I'm going to put my Overwatch cones exactly to the south of me, the same way I did on the first time before I, got killed. And again, the same thing's going to happen. We're going to have our 4 drones drop in, followed up by our handful of juvies on the right side. Those juvies are going to advance down that right-hand corridor. These drones are going to spread out in a fairly predictable pattern. And here we go. We've got a total of 6 wretches here. And we took out 3 of them. And now we just have to deal with this handful, or no, we only did take out 2. So now we have a handful of wretches to deal with. I'm going to use my scout's grenade. This is going to take 3 of them off the board in one go, and that just leaves one very weakened wretch left to deal with. So I've got 3 action points for Gabe, and what I'm actually going to do is set up an Overwatch to his right, so it's coming to the left of your screen now. And the reason I'm doing this is because the drones are going to want to advance, and I'm going to try to keep as much fire on them to keep them pushed back as I can. You can see that I tried to go with my pistol to increase my chances of hitting that wretch. Didn't work with my scout, so I'm going to use my heavy here to help clean it up. And thankfully he was able to hit the wretch, take him off the board, and that leaves 1 action point for him. This was sort of a foolish idea. My plan was to try to hit that drone with a grenade and cause him to stand up and move into Gabe's Overwatch and hopefully get hit and off the board, but following my own advice, I decided to take it slow. I put my heavy into cover. and had Sid overwatch to the right. So now when the enemies start advancing, you're going to see that drone does take some shots at us way across the map. He doesn't connect, thankfully, which is pretty rare on Insane. Your enemies are going to hit you a lot, so you need to make sure you're really well covered. And now you can see they're doing the same thing that I like to do. They've got a pretty solid wall of Overwatch cones preventing us from advancing. So we're going to use our friends the grenades and kind of bust up their wall here. Sid and the Heavy both have their grenades ready to go. Gabe does not have a grenade, but I want to utilize his chainsaw. And my Scout doesn't have her grenade either. So what we're going to do is basically, like I said, we're going to continue to slow play this. I move my Heavy back up to this box. He has his grenade ready, just like I said. And I'm going to try to take one off the board by throwing the grenade right next to him. And that's going to be enough to not only take one drone off the board, but it actually busts up the other drone's Overwatch cone. Now, this seems a little... Like I said, it's a very slow strategy, but it's very safe. You want to focus your fire on one enemy or a couple of enemies at a time. So now we're going to go up to Sid, which I misspoke. Sid did not have his grenade ready at this point. But he's in a very safe place as I wait for the enemies to come to us. So I'm actually going to fall Sid back a little bit so I can move my Heavy back behind this APC for cover. This is going to force the enemies to move up considerably if they want to try to get shots on them, and it's going to make it so the units from both the left and the right, or if you want to call it east and west, left or right sides of the field, can get fire on them with a higher hit chance. On Insane, if you're shooting at an enemy and you have a 60 or 70% chance of hitting them, you're not really going to get a 60 or 70% hit, 60 or 70% of the time. It's much less than that. So I usually like to try to hit at least 75% or better on my hit percentage. It doesn't always happen, and sometimes, like I have seen times where a 10% shot will make contact, but it's not like when you're playing on the lower difficulties where you can start taking shots at 30% and hitting them consistently. The game it's not ridiculously hard, but it's not very forgiving when it comes to that. So, you can see I've got Overwatch going again. I've got 2 cones of Overwatch covering both sides of the field. Both my Scout and my support are being covered by that one Overwatch. And right here you can see that both my Heavy and my Vanguard are being sort of caged in a little bit. We can definitely get around that cone, but it's going to make it difficult. So what I do is I just Overwatch their Overwatch. I know that they're not going to shoot at me from where they're at right now, so I decide that I'll Overwatch right where the Heavy is looking in case this drone on the left advances. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Overwatch ability with my Scout and the Overwatch ability with Gabe to sort of double Overwatch this one drone. Now it says... There's no indicator that says when you Overwatch you are going to trigger an action, but if your unit, and I've seen this happen, I don't know if it's every time, I don't know what the exact mechanic is, but if your unit has to step around their cover to go into Overwatch, I've seen it trigger a shot from the enemy that's overwatching you. So you want to make sure that your units are going to stand up and kind of turn into themselves, not turn out away from their cover, because that will trigger a Overwatch shot, and from the distance that drone was, it probably would have killed me. So, as you can see, that drone did decide to charge directly through my Overwatch. It did, since it was the Heavy, it did interrupt him, and he just decided to Overwatch us instead of shooting, which was very lucky because he could have wiped my run right there. But I had Gabe go over and use his chainsaw to execute the enemy. And then we had one down drone that my Scout took off the board with an execution. And just like that, we're through the map. So not too bad. We're going to skip the cutscene here. I'm going to show you guys what we get for rewards from the crates that we picked up. We get that power barrel, which is nice. We get the accuracy bonus for the Heavy, which is nice. And we've got a total of 4 cases because we completed the mission without a gear being downed or killed. So I'm going to pop those crates for you guys, show you what we got. and that will be the end of this video. So let's open up our claim our cases. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope that you found this guide useful. I will be putting up the rest of the maps, and stick around for that. Until next time, take care of yourselves, everybody. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more content like this, please like and subscribe. You can also check us out on Twitch at Hammer Bros Gaming. I am Blades of God, and until next time, have a great day, everyone.